Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Now in today's video we're going to get straight into it. Now we can argue that we probably had the worst start we could have imagined, 1 point in 5 games, and it's only getting worse in terms of fixtures. We've now got Liverpool on our next match, then we've got Man City at home and Chelsea away. We've got tough fixtures coming up. I have to say the panic really is starting to set in. We've played 5 games now. I think in the Wolves game we can argue we didn't deserve anything from it. We had a poor match. The Villa game, maybe we did. It was unlucky to get the red card. It was undeserved. In terms of the actual match, we barely got a sniff of a chance in the game. We got the penalty which we missed. Yes, if we scored it, it could have been a different game, but that didn't happen, so we move on. And we have the Leeds game where you could argue the panic was starting to set in a bit by that point. You know, we lost 2 games. A result had to come from it. It was an end-to-end game. We really could have scored that Lundstrom chance. There wasn't really many chances for us. We had a Baldock one as well, which he sort of made on his own, but except for that, there wasn't really a clear-cut chance, and I think we paid for that in the end because Leeds did have a lot of chances. Arguably, they weren't as clear-cut as our chances, but they had a lot more nonetheless, and we were made to pay for it, unfortunately, very late on, so there was little time to react. Then going into the Arsenal game, it really started to add on then. You know, that's 3 defeats out of 3. Not a single goal scored as well, which is another big problem. Arsenal, obviously, decent team. We invited the pressure, meaning it was only a matter of time with the ability they had up front for them to score. They scored 2 goals in very quick succession, meaning they were out of sight pretty early on. We got a goal back with time to go. Nothing really happened afterwards, which was a shame. There wasn't really another chance after that. We thought we can get an equaliser here. Then it moves us on to pretty briefly where we are now, the Fulham game. It was a massive game, obviously. If we'd have won that match, I think our season could arguably start to be back on track. You know, we'd be out the bottom 3 and start to build on our 3 tough fixtures. There was more of it against Fulham, but I think you could argue they're so bad defensively that if we can't create anything against Fulham, who can we create? So luckily we did that, but we didn't convert the chances that we made. So it's a little scary, a little disappointing in that sense, but we got a draw, so I don't think we took a step back. We also didn't take a step forward. We kind of continued where we are. It was disappointing because we had a lot of chances in the first half, but he's getting a lot of criticism at the moment. But Burnley didn't really help himself in that game. He missed a lot of chances, that header being the key chance, and you just have to think that if he'd have scored that, it could have been a completely different game. But the world's full of if, buts and maybes, and we can't really think like that too much. Then we got the draw. We were very lucky to get that as well. I mean, they went down the other end and scored after missing a penalty as well. After scoring that, we were very lucky that Mitrovic fouled us because we created nothing after conceding, and as much as we wanted to score, there was no real chance. Got the penalty. After the penalty, there wasn't a chance either, so it's not really looking great. It's looking quite depressing. Looking over the Fulham game, we did have good and bad spells, but I think that's the problem. There were too many bad spells for a team which are almost written off to some extent. I think they are a decent team, not as bad as people say they are, but the fact that we gave them too many chances to get in and win the game, I mean, they really should have won it, to be honest. When you look at the chances they had, it's really not a good sign, especially as if it seemed like we were the team playing away from home the last 20 minutes. Really doesn't fill with much confidence. Now, the reason I wanted to do a quick introduction on those matches we just played is because I feel these were matches where something we could have got out of them. I'm not saying we're not going to get anything out of our next 3 fixtures, but anyone can agree that those are going to be much harder games to get anything out of than the ones we've just played. Nonetheless, if we get a win in any of these games, it does put our season back on track, and 4 points looks a lot better than 3 if we were to get a win out of one of these 3 games. But like I mentioned, we've got 3 tough fixtures now. We've got the Liverpool game on Saturday, 8 o'clock, then we've got the Man City game at home, and then we've got the Chelsea game away. If I want to end on a positive note with these 3 fixtures, all I'd say is that they're teams which are obviously amazing. They're renowned around the world for how good they are, but they're all in some kind of transition, in my opinion. We look at Liverpool, they've had 2 amazing seasons recently, but they've just now got injuries to Alisson and Van Dijk. Although it's early doors, they haven't been to the same standard they have been for the last 2 years so far, so that's something positive to look at. Man City, they're there for the taking in some sense that, you know, they lost 5-2 to Leicester, although they may have a bit of misfortune in that game. Problem is, if we're not going to be attacking, then we don't stand a chance, because that's how they lost that game, and I don't see us winning anything or even getting a draw out of the Man City game if we just sit back and invite pressure. And the Chelsea game, probably the team out of the 3 which has got the biggest transition at the moment. They changed half their squad basically for the better, of course, but you've still got to try and gel as a team, and there's early signs of them doing it, there's early signs of them not doing it. You know, the fact they were winning against Southampton, who are a decent team, but then couldn't hold on and drew, shows that there was both signs of strengths and weaknesses in that team, and hopefully we can find ways to exploit it once it comes to that match. But in my opinion, as long as we get possibly 2 points out of these, it's good enough, and it's a decent start to build on. That would make it 9 games and 3 points, which isn't great, but it's enough once we start having, you could say, easier fixtures, teams which are in the top 6, and maybe confidence starts to grow after that as well. People playing a bit more creativity, a bit more independent styles rather than just sort of following the instructions. So now the sort of recap's done, let's go into the actual match itself, the analysis against Liverpool. Now the only positive I can really take from this Liverpool team for us is that for the last 2 years they've been one of the best teams in the world, but they haven't started that way so far this season. We've also got 2 key players out in Alisson and Van Dijk who are very pivotal to the way they play, especially defensively. We have to play Lord Adrian in goal now, which I don't think is a big shame for us. Now Adrian has played 13 games for Liverpool and kept 2 clean sheets. Do you want to guess who one of the clean sheets was against? Yes, none other than Sheffield United. Not a great sign, is it? If we actually get a chance, and we've got more chance of scoring, but considering how we played so far, I don't think we could even get that far up the pitch. Another player to look out for as well is Fabinho. He's played 4 games for Liverpool centre-back and kept 4 clean sheets. One of those being against Ajax midweek. I think he's a great player, and I don't think he's obviously as good as Van Dijk, but he will fit in very well for him. And I think that's one thing we've got to bear in mind, that although it's exciting knowing we can play against Liverpool without Van Dijk, it might not be as clear sailing as we think going forward, and especially in the form we're in creative-wise, that might not even matter anyway, no matter who's playing in defence for them. But to get anything out of this game, even with most of their players out, it's going to require a massive shift from our players, which we obviously will do. We've done for every game under Wilder, but we're going to have some sort of spark, some sort of creativity from somewhere, because especially away from home, that just hasn't happened this season. We've just got to hope maybe for some reason out of all the games, it's the one where we're least expected to win that something gets pulled out of the bag. So I think when we put that all into consideration, I think the goalkeeper midfield played great in the Fulham game. I don't really think there's too much I can have a go at them for that, but I think defensively and offensively things need to change. Last season we were one of the best defensive teams, and I know we've lost O'Connell, but I don't think that's enough of an excuse to show how poor we've been compared to last season. So in my opinion, defensively things are going to have to change. I'd like to see us play Bogle. As much as I love Baldock, him and Basham are 2 of my favourite players for us. I just don't think he's been as good this season. He needs a break. He maybe steps out of the team and he can recover his form, but he hasn't been to the similar standard. He hasn't attacked as much as he did last year. Maybe it's down to tactics and people finding him out, but he just hasn't had the same outlet that he did last year, so I think he needs to take a rest. I think Basham needs a rest as well. He really hasn't looked as good as he did last year as well. Doesn't look as solid, looks a little nervous. I think obviously it wasn't really his fault, but he did lead to the Lookman goal. It bounced off him, unlucky, but still he hasn't bombed forward as much as he did, so I'd like to see Paddy replace him. Against Leeds, he was meant to be the one standing back, but he was almost going forward with the ball every time, so it shows he's comfortable on the ball, and I think that's enough incentive to show that he should be playing on the right side of the defence and replace Basham. Egan, nothing really he's done wrong in my opinion. Then left centre back, I'd like to see Stevens play there again. Massive shame he only got 20 minutes playing there, because I think he really would have done well against Fulham there, as much as Lowe would have done well left wing back. The new concussion rule states have to wait 2 weeks till he can actually play again, and I'd like to see Osborne play as the left wing back. Then the midfield, I'd like to keep it the same. Now going up front, I think it's between Burke and McBurney as to who's going to be the hold up man. McBurney's obviously had terrible form this season, I like to stand up for the guy, but he really had to do better against Fulham in my opinion. I mean, obviously he's still not a write-off, he's still got loads of the season to go, but he really does need to step up soon and get a goal to prove the doubters wrong. I think obviously once he gets 1 goal, more will be followed to come, fingers crossed, but to say he'll get it against Liverpool is unlikely. And I think when we look at Burke, he's a hold-up man. His sort of style of play works better away from home because he's pacey, he's strong, and he's decisive and he's clinical when he has the ball. Maybe not with a shot, because you haven't actually seen him have a shot yet, but when he passes, he does really eye-of-the-needle passes, very precise and very effective as well, like we saw against Villa. Now in terms of McGoldrick, I feel this is the player where he's out of his depth. I've loved him, he's been such a great player for the club for the last 3 years, but if we look at him even after lockdown, he hasn't been the same player, and I think given lockdown there was a big space of time in between matches which started and stopped, and I believe that was enough time for clubs to sort of realise his style of play and how he affected us. Anyone that's been to watch us live has seen his movement, and it is spectacular and it's very unique to anyone else, which I think in this sense is also a pro and a con, but I think now it is the con because people have caught up to how he plays with us. He drops deep to receive the ball, and teams know as long as they get one person to mark him every single game, that's all they need to do, and then he's done. And there's no creativity for us, and there's no way we can get into the game. The way to resolve this, in my opinion, is he just can't play anymore. We could get away with him playing for us last year and not scoring a goal because we were obviously doing very well in the league, didn't need a goal, but now we do. We're paying the price for it. We really need to score, and to get 2 goals all season for a striker is not going to be enough this season. So the way to resolve this, in my opinion, is for chasing a game. Like in the Arsenal one, we get 2 centre mids and we get a central attacking midfielder in McGoldrick who sits behind the 2 strikers, puts enough pressure on the defence to try and create something. It's almost equivalent to sort of the Duffy role in the Championship. It's obviously too offensive expensive to start him in that sort of game. In the Premier League now, you know, it's too clinical, you know, we can't be too open. But I think in terms of him making an impact, that would be it. You could argue he's not being played enough and we should sell him, but I just feel for what we get from him, we probably wouldn't sell him for any more than $1 million, and his wages aren't the highest. So I think in terms of that, it's probably ideal. And I can't really, even though people say McBurney's in poor form, I still can't see him being ahead of McBurney and Brewster, especially Moussa if he stays fit this season. And I think Burke's better than him as well. So that's my opinion on McGoldrick this season. I think Brewster, he needs to start in this game. We didn't pay him to sit on the bench. I get, you know, he couldn't register for the Arsenal game, and I get obviously for Fulham you don't want to throw him in straight away, but we need pace against Liverpool to counter-attack them. We need someone with a bit of edge, and you could argue maybe playing against his old team could motivate him as well and prove why they shouldn't have let him go. Now, a win in this match is almost impossible. Liverpool haven't lost a game at home for the last 3 years if you talk about the Premier League, so it's really not going to happen, is it? But a draw's not out of this world. You know, Burnley did it last season. We've got to hope maybe they're a bit more vulnerable with the injury of Van Dijk and Alisson. We'll wait and see. I think I have shown some sort of silver lining in this video. I do admit it's been a little negative, especially for me. I do like to be quite positive about us, but I think you've got to argue after 5 games there's not really much positive to take from it. I was very ambitious until the Fulham game. Even after the reaction I was quite positive, but I think just reflecting on it a few days later, the fact that we couldn't even beat them, don't get me wrong, they had a lot to prove and they've really up for a fight. Nonetheless, it was quite disappointing that we could only draw at home against Fulham. If we don't pick up form, you know, before Christmas, especially the way we're heading, it does look like relegation, so something's going to have to change soon and quick. You know, we're just going to have to hope Brewster's going to pull out the bag for us this season. I mean, that's why we brought him in. He's obviously got a lot of pressure on him because we expect almost to be guaranteed safe with him playing in the teams. So if he doesn't do that, then we're going down by the looks of it. But if he wants to get back in that Liverpool team, which that buyout clause shows they're interested in, he's going to have to play under pressure for both us and for them in the future. So if he can handle the pressure, then I'm sure they'll want him back at some point. Anyway, that about wraps up the video, guys. Let me know in the comments how you think we'll do against Liverpool. I mean, it's ambitious looking for a draw, I have to say, but I'm always positive even when I say I'm not. So let's hope we get something out of this game. And until next time, guys, take it easy. Up the blades, come on.